Hi, welcome to People Behind Your Water. My name is Marty Grimes. I work in the communications unit at the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and I'm stepping in as the host of the show this month. And today we have Terri Anderson, who manages our water supply operations and analysis unit. But before I get to Terri, I wanted to introduce the Water District. The Santa Clara Valley Water District manages an integrated water resources system that includes the supply of clean, safe water, flood protection, and stewardship of streams for Santa Clara County's 1.8 million residents. The district effectively manages 10 dams and reservoirs, 3 water treatment plants, a state-of-the-art water quality lab, and nearly 400 acres of groundwater recharge ponds and more than 275 miles of streams. We provide wholesale water and groundwater management services to municipal water suppliers and private water retailers who then deliver that water to homes and businesses in Santa Clara County. So I'd like to welcome you, Terri, to the show this month to talk all about water and water supply and where we are with our water. People are always asking, are we in a drought? How are things going? The winter's almost over. So in general, how are we doing with our water supply?
Okay, well, our water supply condition, I guess we're in we have fair water supplies. As everybody knows, it's been dry. In fact, January and February was the driest January and February on record in San Jose. March is on track to also be very dry, so while that's a little disappointing, the residents of the county have made active efforts in conservation. The district has used that conservation and made investments in other water supplies. We get, the county gets over 55% of its water supply from outside the county from imported sources. Mm-hmm. We have stored some of that water in our groundwater basin, so our groundwater basin is in good condition. We've also stored water outside the county so that we have additional supplies available to us in dry years such as this that we can draw upon to help meet the county's needs.
So in December was okay. We started out this year with quite a great storm. We actually filled up some of our reservoirs at that point, right?
Yeah, December really helped us out. A very wet December. It was so wet, in fact, that we did have some of our reservoirs actually fill and spill. Mm-hmm. But since then, we haven't seen those kind of storms again.
Is that unusual that our reservoirs actually fill up to the level that they spill over?
It's a fairly common occurrence, yes, especially in some of our smaller reservoirs that have very productive watersheds.
And that's the pattern for our reservoirs, right? That we want them to fill in the winter, and in the summer,
yes.
Do they empty completely, or some of them get pretty low?
Well, no. So the reservoirs were built, just like you said, they were built so that they could capture the winter storm runoff and save it up for an area that it doesn't rain in the summer, so that we could then release that water through the spring, summer, and fall months to use for water supply. And most of that water is used to percolate back through the streams, and the county's recharge ponds puts the water in the ground so it's available for use by the private water companies and municipal water companies. We don't generally drain the reservoirs to empty. We do try to maintain emergency pools and pools that are available for the fish in the reservoirs, but the general trend is to fill them in the winter and then use that water throughout the rest of the year so that they're at a low point again at the beginning of the next winter to capture the runoff that we anticipate.
And then we also keep some room in the reservoirs to provide some flood protection. Is that right?
Yes.
And is that in all the reservoirs, or? Some of them, we'll say, right? Some of them we
yes, they're usually flood management guidelines on all of the reservoirs, and so that's based on past experience on how much rainfall and runoff we expect in a given month for each reservoir, and so we manage the reservoir storage level not to exceed those levels and still maintain a safe buffer for incoming storms through the rest of the winter.
And how are the reservoirs right now? What's the level?
The storage in all of our reservoirs is below normal for this time of year, and that's even if you take into account the fact that some of our reservoirs have operating restrictions on them for dam seismic safety. So they are lower than we would typically see at this time of year, and that's a result of the lower rainfall that we've had.
Okay, so what about what about the statewide conditions? You mentioned 55% of our water is imported from outside the area.
Right.
How's that looking?
Right. The district manages 2 imported water sources, one source from the state and one from the federal government. Their large reservoirs are actually have about average storage for this time of year, so that's good news. The less good news, I guess, is that the snowpack isn't where we'd expect to see for this time of year. It's less than 70% of what you'd typically see for this time of year. So that is leading to lower than normal allocations of water that we'll get from both of those supplies this year.
Okay, so can we talk a little bit about how that works, that the water district has a certain maximum amount of water that we could get from the state and federal supplies.
Right.
But then it depends on the weather, how much snowpack, what's available, and what can be pumped from the delta will determine how much of that we get. So 100% would be great, but we don't always get 100% of our allocation.
Right. We have a contract allocation. Only in the very wettest of years would we get 100% of that amount. You're right, the amount that we actually get allocated in a certain year is dependent upon the snowpack, reservoir storage, the ability to pump that water through the delta. The allocations that we are getting this year are expected to be less than average. I think an average allocation from both those sources is on the order of 60 to 70% of our contract amount.
So if we're only getting about 60 or 70% of our imported water, and if our, well, correct me if I
That's under normal conditions.
Oh, okay, under normal conditions.
Yes.
This year we might get less than that.
Yes.
A lot less than that.
Yes.
And our local reservoirs are below normal.
Yes.
So why aren't we talking about droughts, Terri? Why are we in a drought situation?
We're in a dry year situation, but again, the district plans for dry year conditions and multiple dry year conditions. That's why we store water in our groundwater basin, so we've got those reserves. We store water outside the county, and we also enter into short and long-term transfer acquisitions from other water districts and parties throughout the state so that we can pull on those water supplies when we're seeing lower than normal local reservoir conditions or lower than normal imported water allocations.
Okay, so you're saying that we can have a dry year. It doesn't mean we're having a drought year because we have other water supplies.
Right, there's no, I guess, hard and fast definition of what a drought is. I think most people would generally say it's could be a series of dry years. Generally, a drought condition could be declared, for instance, by the governor, as Governor Schwarzenegger did during the last drought, I believe in 2008. But the district is here to help manage water supplies through those dry year or drought conditions, so that the residents can count on a reliable water supply even in dry years.
So last year was average or fairly wet, or it was wet enough that we had water at the end of the season to carry over to this year, right?
Yes, well, for reliability's sake, we always actually plan on carrying over some water to the next year, just as an extra insurance policy against dry weather conditions, especially at the beginning of the winter. Last year we did draw upon reserves because while our imported water allocations were closer to the normal range, our local water supply conditions were a little below normal. So we did draw upon our reserves, for instance, in the semi-tropic bank down near semi-tropic to help shore up our supplies.
Okay, so let's talk about that bank a little bit. The semi-tropic bank is water that you say we store outside the county.
Right.
So how does that work?
The Semi-Tropic Water District is also a contractor with the State Water Project. And so in years when we don't need to use all of the water we've been allocated from the state in county, we can deliver that water to Semi-Tropic through the California Aqueduct. They in turn use or store that water in their groundwater basin, and then in dry years we can request that that water be returned to us.
And Semi-Tropic is down by Bakersfield,
yes.
right? So we send the water down to Bakersfield, and how do we get it back?
In the dry years when we want the water back, they can either send to us the water that they would ordinarily receive from the Delta, from the State Water Project, or they can actually pump that water out of their groundwater basin, put it in the California Aqueduct. It goes south to other water districts. In exchange, we get an equal amount of water pumped from the Delta and delivered to this county.
So the water doesn't actually physically get pushed back up from Bakersfield. We just take it from the Delta that would have gone
So
south.
it's an exchange mechanism, water for water.
And about how much water do we have there?
We have over 300,000 acre feet of water stored in Semi-Tropic right now.
And most people don't know what an acre foot is. That's a huge amount of water. That's almost as much water as we use in our county all year long.
Yes. Yes.
Which is about, what, 350, 370?
Yes, I think about 350,000
acre feet in our
year.
county.
So we have almost 1 year's supply stored in Semi-Tropic. Now we can't get all that water back in 1 year. It is limited to how much we can get back per year, but it will help sustain the water supplies for the district during a long-term drought.
So it's kind of like an ATM machine that has a daily limit of
yes.
30,000, something like that, 30,000 acre feet a year, something like that.
Right.
Okay. So, but our local groundwater, sounds like that's our saving grace this year, that it's in a fair condition, normal conditions.
Yes.
And that's because we've been recharging water during wet years. Do we always have water to recharge?
Yes.
Even when there was a drought, these ponds like the one behind us, we still had water recharging, right?
Right. The groundwater basin is an integral part of the county's water supply. And so the district is continually putting water into the basin so that the water is pumped out by wells, either from private parties or water companies, to help meet demand. So that's a continual process. That recharge process takes place through most of the streams that residents see running in the summer, and also through the recharge ponds that we have throughout the county.
So we're constantly releasing water from reservoirs so it can be recharged in the groundwater through the streams or through ponds.
Right.
And what other water supplies do we have? We got the groundwater, local reservoirs, imported water, semi-tropic. What else we got?
Right.
Conservation, right?
Yes, conservation and recycled water are also very important programs that help meet the county's water supplies.
And I think you mentioned at the beginning that the community has really been conserving pretty well since the last drought. In fact, has water use been down since 2008, since the governor declared that drought?
It had been down. We saw about a 5% increase in overall demands last year. But we are still not up, our demands are still not up to the demand levels that we saw in that last drought. So yes, like I said, conservation is a really important way of maintaining a reliable water supply for the county. That water that is conserved, we can store in reserves to have for future years.
Right, we always tell people that any gallon of water you save today is water that we can have for the next drought, the next dry period. Right. So you are the manager of a unit that does a lot of other things, a lot of interesting things. Can you talk about the rest of your unit?
Okay, well, again, we're called the Operations Planning and Analysis Unit, and so besides operating the district's vast system of pipelines, reservoirs, and perk ponds, we operate the reservoirs, and that is takes into account more things than flood control, which we've already mentioned, and water supply. There are also environmental and fishery concerns that we manage for, recreation, safety in terms of the Department of Safety of Dam restrictions, our water rights, So we manage for that. As far as the water rights, the district has 18 local water rights. That the right to that local water is, again, an important part of our water supply. So we do the water accounting, which is very similar to dollar accounting in each year, where the water has come from and where it goes. And then we're required annually to report to the state on our water rights so that we can maintain and protect those water rights for the county's residents. We're also responsible for managing and protecting the assets, the perk ponds, making sure that they are in serviceable shape, that they get maintained adequately so that they are a reliable asset for our system. And we also do long-term modeling for the water district. We look at the long-term water supplies, potential opportunities, investments for the district so that we can have a reliable water supply well out into the future.
So the people in your unit, are they all engineers, civil engineers, or what kind of background do the people in your unit have?
We have several engineers. We have computer modelers as well. We also have 6 raw water operators and a supervisor that are actually at our raw water control center. They're specially trained to operate our raw water system, our pipelines, reservoirs, perk ponds again, and they're doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So we have somebody on staff 24 hours a day.
Right.
And they're at Rinconada Water Treatment Plant?
Yes, the control center's at Rinconada. And so those people are really responsible for the real-time reliability of the county's water supply. If there's an emergency outage, an electrical outage, they are responsible for being sure that water supply, raw water, still gets delivered to the county's treatment plants so that the residents don't see an interruption in their water supplies.
So because we have several different water sources and lots of different reservoirs, if something goes down over here, they can switch things around to provide water to the treatment plants or wherever it needs to go.
Yes, we always have a
Plan B,
a plan B in place every week. Our plan is updated to identify how we're operating, and if something goes wrong on a certain system, what our alternate plan will be so that we can maintain the reliability.
So this is all computer driven, right? They're sitting in front of a set of terminals
in front of a suite of computer monitors. So it's a remote SCADA system, which is a system control and data acquisition program, which is generally used for in systems like this to operate remote sites that are distributed geographically. But there are also, the district also has field personnel that are out there. Some operations changes needed to be made manually, or they are double checking things in the field when our operators at the control center make changes.
So you're talking about a huge valve that somebody on the computer system, on the SCADA system, could have opened or shut a valve.
Right.
Sometimes you might have somebody go out to that valve and make sure it opened properly,
or they'll be observing the conditions in the creek. If we turn up the flows, we want to see that field situation matches what the remote operation that we made. So yeah, they're operating those large valves in our pipelines or the large valves from our reservoirs. They're operating our hydroelectric facilities, our pumping plants, and the delivery of those imported water sources into our system.
Well, those are some of the most interesting jobs, I think, here at the district. They do really interesting things. They're actually out there moving water all over the valley under our feet.
Yes.
So this is the people behind your water, so we always like to get to know the people we're interviewing a little more about you. How long have you been at the water district?
I've been at the district over 30 years. I am a civil engineer by education, and I have generally worked at the district in a water supply capacity, either the planning, design, or construction of some of our large pipelines. I've worked managing our imported water sources and the contracts that we have for those supplies, and now in the operations of the water supply. So it's Been an interesting, interesting career.
So we're going to stick it out for another 30, 20 maybe? Can we still have you for, you're doing such a great job.
It's interesting, but I don't think I'll commit myself to another 30 years of it.
Okay, well, we tried. Well, thank you very much for telling us about your unit and the water supply situation. I feel a little better that we're in a fair condition, even though it's been really dry.
Sure.
And that we have such a great water system that can kind of accommodate 1 or 2 dry years.
Right.
Well, thanks a lot. So thank you for joining us for this episode. A couple things. We're going to follow this with a clip of one of our water treatment plant operators. So stay tuned after this to learn a little bit about Santa Teresa Water Treatment Plant. And next month, we're very excited. We're going to be taking a tour of the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, which is near Alviso, and we're very excited to get out there. It's going to be opening for the first time in June. That facility is just being built. So please stay tuned for that next month. And also, if you haven't already joined our e-news list, please go to our website at www.valleywater.org and click on the little envelope icon so you can sign up for our Valley Water e-news monthly e-newsletter. So thank you again for joining us.
My name is Ida Huber. I'm a senior water treatment plant operator here at Santa Teresa Water Treatment Plant, and I've been with the district for 12 years. We bring raw water into the treatment plant. The first step that it goes into is the flocculation basins, where we add coagulants, and that helps the particles that are in the water clump together to form larger particles that are easier to settle out. Water then goes into our sedimentation basins, where it slowly goes through the length of the basin and settles out the particles into the bottom of the basin, which are then eventually drawn out. It goes from the sedimentation basins into our ozone contactor, where we bubble ozone gas into the water as it serpentines through the contactor. Once it leaves the contactor, it then goes into the last step, which is our filters, where the water is filtered through the media and removes the balance of the particles that are left in the water. It then goes into our clear well, where it's stored until it's used by the retailers. I worked in a small seasonal treatment plant and got my first license there and became intrigued with the process of water treatment. On my off time, my main hobby is I do triathlons and long distance cycling. I like the challenge of water treatment because you can learn something new every day. We take a lot of pride in the fact that we create clean, safe drinking water that people can turn on their faucets and rely on the product that's coming out of their sink because of the current technology and the treatment process. I have the opportunity to work with a very diverse group of people. We're here for 12-hour shifts. We staff the plant 24/7, 365. So, you know, we're here together on the holidays and the weekends and the night shifts, and so it's rewarding to have a good group of people that you can work with and rely on. Because of our location, we have the opportunity to see a lot of wildlife. We had a few years ago wild pigs who had gotten under one of our fences, and they would come through and in the middle of the night. So if you were on the night shift, you got to enjoy the very large pigs rooting around in the grass. We come in every day and we monitor a system that creates a product that people consume. It's teamwork. It's not just the operators. We have our crafts with us. So we have a whole integrated team of people who keep the plant running to make sure when you get up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water that it's good, safe, clean water that comes out of your tap, because we're here at the plant making sure that that happens. The value of water is life. We need water to drink. We need water for various tasks. We need water to grow our food. We need water to live.
Water has always been the lifeblood of our bustling, ever-changing region. And this was just as true for the Valley's early farmers as it is today. Here, a complex and reliable water system developed by the Santa Clara Valley Water District provides safe, clean drinking water 24 hours a day, as well as protection from flooding and enhancement of our natural environment. Santa Clara Valley Water District, protecting your future. Learn more at valleywater.org.